Hey everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. My name is Kevin. We're out in the workshop today because I have a project that I need to get done. If you've been watching our channel, you know that we're getting back into raising Coturnix quail. And just last week I had 83 of them hatch. They're about a week old right now, which means in about 2 weeks they'll be ready to come out of their brooder and into regular cages. I have this grow out cage behind me that we've been using now for several years, and I really like the design of it. I like how it turned out when I originally built it, but it's not going to be enough to house all of these right away. So we're going to actually build a second one just like this today. I'm going to try to walk you guys step by step as we build a cage like this. This cage is 8 feet long. From floor to ceiling is 12 inches tall. It's 2 inches deep. And overall height with the legs and everything, it stands 5 feet up off the ground. It has 3 doors here on the front, so we can have a lot of access to get in for food and water and to catch quail as we need to do that. And overall, this cage has worked out really well for us. So I'm excited to build a second one because I really do plan on having a continuous supply of quail and quail chicks here on the farm, not only for our own consumption, but to be able to sell here locally as well. So I'm excited. This is a good project to get done. Let's get started. I'm going to show you exactly what we're going to be doing. Now this project is going to be built almost exclusively out of 2x2s. So yesterday what I did is I took a bunch of 2x4s and I ripped them down into 2x2s so that we can use those. It's a lot cheaper to do it that way and to buy 2x4s and use your table saw to rip them into 2x2s. But if you don't have that ability, if you don't have a table saw, then you can go out and you can buy 2x2 lumber to actually build this out of. So that's what we're going to be using today, 2x2s. I've also got some 2.5-inch screws. These are deck screws that should hold up good over time. And then we're going to be using 1/2 by 1/2 inch wire on all the parts that need wire. With older quail, you can get by with using like 1 inch by 1/2 inch wire, but I have found for the grow out, since we put them in here at 3 weeks old and they're still a little bit on the small side, I like to use the 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. And that works out really well. I don't have any problems with any of the poop not making it through the wire. So that's basically all we're going to be using today to build this. Obviously some hinges and latches and things like that as well, but we'll get to that when we get along the way. Let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is try to build the frame of the cage. So the first thing we're going to build are the 2 ends, the actual upright sides here of the cage. For this, we're going to need 2 pieces cut at 5 feet long, and we're going to need 3 pieces cut at 24 inches, or 2 feet long. So we're going to do that first, and we'll get those assembled, and then we'll start putting it all together. Now that we have all the pieces cut out for our legs, we can actually start assembling the 2 legs for the 2 ends. I've actually gone ahead and put one together already, mainly because it's been several years since I built this first one. I need to make sure I'm remembering exactly how to do this so I can teach you guys step by step how to do this. So this is going to be the first leg here. I'm going to go ahead and put together the second one and tell you the measurements and where everything should go. But this is how it's going to turn out looking. It's got a solid foot at the bottom, or a solid board at the bottom. And then this is going to go like this. And then our cage is going to basically be built on top of these across. So let's get started on the second leg. All right, we're going to start by laying out our 2 legs here, the 5-foot pieces. And what we're going to do on these is we're actually going to mark a line, actually 2 lines, From the top, we're going to measure down 1.5 inches. We're going to put a line there. And then we're also going to mark at 1 foot. And we're going to put a line there. And then we'll just use our square to draw that line all the way across both boards. Now we can start attaching the 24-inch pieces to these boards. So we're going to lay these out like this. We're going to put our first 24-inch piece across, and the top of that board is going to be at that 1.5 inch mark. Basically what we're doing is we're leaving enough space to run another 2x2 on top of that later on. And then for the second mark, the top of our other board will be at that 12-inch mark. All right, we have those two boards connected. Now our last 24-inch piece will just go right at the bottom. That will be what's on the floor. We'll just attach that right at the bottom of these two 5-foot boards. Our two ends are now assembled. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to connect these at the bottom so that these will actually stand up. We want the overall length of this cage to be 8 feet, so we're going to cut two boards, two of our 8-foot long boards, we're going to cut to 7 feet 9 inches, and those will run in between. These are 2x2s are 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches, so we'll have 3 inches with the 2x2s. So by cutting these to 7 foot 9, we'll end up with a total length of 8 feet. All right, so we're going to stand one of our sides up here. And we're going to attach these down at the bottom. One thing with these 2x2s, when you're attaching boards that are close to the end of a board, like we are down here, close to the end of this board, it is best to pre-drill, otherwise you will split some of your wood. So I always like to pre-drill so that our screws don't split the boards. You can also add some wood glue to these joints if you want to. I personally don't feel like there's a need to do that, but if you want to, you can do that and it will give it some added strength. Now we'll just attach the other side to the other end of this exactly the same way. All right, and now you're starting to see the overall size of our cage. It's gonna be, like I said, exactly the same size as the last one we built. But you're starting to be able to see what size this actually is. We're gonna add some braces now to the bottom to really secure this up, and then we're gonna start building the actual cage portion. Now for the braces, what I've done is I've cut some scrap pieces of 2x2 at 8 inches long. We'll set our chop saw here at 45-degree angle, and we'll just cut a 45-degree angle in each end of these boards so that we can attach those at the bottom to really secure up that frame. So we'll end up with a piece that looks like this. And we'll do that, we'll make 8 of those to attach to the frame. All right, I've pre-drilled all of my support pieces. And we're just gonna be using some shorter screws here, and we're just gonna attach these. One will go like this, and one will go like this in each of the 4 corners along the base. There we go, and you can see how much that already firms up that corner. We'll just do the same on all of the corners, and then we'll be back to start on the cage. All right, so now we've got the frame pretty much done. You can see that it's really firmed up nicely. Now we're gonna start building the actual cage portion on the top here. The first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna use 2 of our 8-foot pieces of 2x2, and we're gonna run these right across on these boards here on the front and the back. And we'll attach those. And then we'll also run a piece of 2x2 in between these two. Then after that, we'll actually staple the floor on here. It'll be much easier to do this now than to try to do the flooring after the rest of the cage is built. All right, and that's attached. Now we'll measure in between these two, and we'll cut a piece of 2x2 to go on each end. Looks like that is going to be 21 inches in between. Measure both sides just to make sure we're right on. Yes, 21 inches. So we'll cut a piece of 21 and we'll attach that here in between these 2 long boards. All right, and now our platform is on. We are going to add a couple more 21-inch pieces. I think we're going to do 3 of them here along the length through the middle, just for added support for the wire. Then we'll get started putting the wire on. Now again, for this cage, just like our other one that we built, we're going to be using 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch hardware cloth. I have found that this works really well for the quail. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut an 8-foot long piece of this. Now for this, I'm going to be using an air stapler, but if all you have is a regular hand stapler, that's fine as well. You can use that. I'm using 1/4 inch by 5/8 inch staples. I'm going to start by just tacking this edge over here, and then we'll pull it down to the other side and see if we did have to do any trimming. I finished putting the wire on the floor of the cage. You might notice that I'm wearing different clothes because it's the next day. Halfway through putting the wire on this cage, for some reason my staple gun just completely stopped working. I took it all apart, tried to fix it. For some reason it's just not working. So I had to run to town last night, pick up a new staple gun, finish this up, and we're back to work on the cage. I'm hoping to get this entire cage done today. So we've got the floor on. The only thing that I did off video that I didn't show, that I hadn't already showed you, is I did end up going and cutting off about a 1/2 inch all the way along here to give myself a little more wiggle room. You guys, if I were to make this cage again, I think what I would do is, instead of making this exactly 24 inches on the inside, I would make it 25 inches on the inside so that you didn't have to cut your piece of welded wire for the length of the cage. So lesson learned, if I make more of these, I will probably make it 25 inches all the way across. It just makes it easier when you have a little more wiggle room with that wire in there. But it still turned out fine. Just had a lot more cutting to do on the wires. All right, on to day 2. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to build the top of the cage, and then we're going to build the doors, and then we'll put the rest of the wire on. So let's get started on the top. Now the top of the cage is going to be very easy to make. We're just going to put some 2x2s across like this. It's basically going to be an exact copy of the floor. So we're going to put our 2x2s across like this. We'll screw those down, and then we will add 3 pieces across for support. So when we staple our wire, we have something to staple our wire to. And then we're also going to add pieces here on the sides as well. So it's basically exactly the same as creating the floor, except, you know, up at the top. Now, once we get this done, we'll move on to building the doors. We won't be putting the rest of the wire on now until the very end. I'd just like to get this piece on before we start building everything else, because that makes it a little easier, but the rest goes on the outside, so it's not a big deal to put that on at the end. All right, we've got the top portion complete, our boards across, our support boards across as well. Now we're going to add some bracing at the back of the cage. This is where you need to determine now which side is going to be the front and which side is going to be the back. I'm going to make this the back of the cage because this is where I had to cut some of the wire. And so I don't want to be going in and out all the time where there might be some sharp pieces. This will be against the back of the cage though, so the quail won't ever be able to cut themselves on this. But when you're opening doors, you may, be able to cut yourself a little bit on that wire. So this is going to be the back of our cage. What we're going to do is we're going to add, I think I'm going to add 3 support braces here. They're going to be 10.5 inches long so that we get this exactly the right spacing here. Now, you can put them right where you have your top and bottom supports, but you might have some trouble screwing through that same spot because you already have a screw going this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to offset them from those a little bit, and that way we'll have a good clean area to put a screw through from the top and the bottom. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to add 3 of these 10.5-inch pieces so that our overall height here is 12 inches from the floor to the ceiling. All right, our back is complete. Now we can move on to figuring out how we want to build the doors on this new cage. Now this is the one part of the cage that I am changing over my original design. Originally when I built this cage that I've been using now for several years, I only built it with 2 doors. I built 2 doors that opened out like this. I put one here and one down at this end. And I thought it wouldn't be a big deal to have to kind of reach toward the middle to do things in here. But over time, I realized that that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. I really needed a door in the middle as well. So then I went ahead and I added this door here. On this new cage, I'm just going to build 2 doors once again, but they're going to be longer doors. I've decided to make 30-inch doors. I'm going to make 2 of them. And I'm going to make them that open like this because I do like this design better where they open down. So we're going to put 2 doors on the new cage. They're going to be 30 inches wide. Let's go over there and I'll show you kind of how that's going to look on the actual cage. All right, here's our new cage behind us. I've cut some pieces of 2x2 just to kind of stick in here. I haven't screwed these in place yet, but I wanted you to be able to see how the new doors are going to be. So there will be just a foot of wire here with no door here, which won't be a big deal. And then there will be a 30-inch long door that goes right here that will open down. Then there will be a foot of just solid wire here in the middle. Again, not a big deal because from either door it's only 6 inches to reach over to the middle. Then there will be another 30-inch door and then some more wire at the end. So I think that this will be a good system. We'll get by with 2 doors, but they'll be larger and they should be real easy to get in and out of the cage. I'm going to start by screwing these into place, and then we'll start measuring to actually make the doors themselves. Our door braces are installed. We can get started making the doors now. I've measured this out. The opening is 30 inches wide by 10.5 inches tall, so just right where we thought it would be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this door a 1/2 inch smaller than the opening. So I'm going to make it 10 inches tall by 29.5 inches long. That'll leave 1/4 inch all the way around, which I think should be plenty of clearance for it to open and close. If not, we'll make some adjustments later on, but I think that that should be fine. So that's what we're going to make our doors, 29.5 by 10 inches, and then we'll get busy installing these. All right, we've got our door frames made. I've tried them in this spot, and to be honest, you guys, it's a little bit bigger gap at the top than I would like. It's probably not a big deal, except occasionally I may move these out into one of our barns that are not quite as secure as this building over the summer. And we do have a lot of snakes in this area, and that spacing will be definitely big enough for a snake to get in. So Luckily, when you cut 2x4s into 2x2s, you're left with these thin strips that you don't need, which first of all, if you have these after you cut your 2x4s into 2x2s, you can cut a point on these, and these make great plant markers for your garden. But today we're going to use them for something else. I'm actually going to use them as a spacer down here at the bottom of this door. And actually, to be honest, this will serve two purposes. It'll help fill in that gap a little bit, but it'll also make a nice smooth edge down here at the bottom, so when you're reaching in, there's no chance that you hit yourself on the wire and cut yourself. So this ended up being kind of a good mistake, I guess. In the future, I guess I would leave this probably about 1/4 of an inch bigger though, so I would make this probably 10 1/4 inches by 29 1/2. The 29 1/2 still, I think, is pretty good so that it opens nicely. So I would just make it a little bit taller. Anyway, not a big deal, easy remedy. We're just going to get some hinges put on these, and then we'll get putting on the rest of the wire over the entire cage, and this project will be complete. All right, you guys, other than putting the rest of the wire on, this project is done. We've got the entire cage built. We've got 2 working doors. I think my plan has been fine, that it'll be easy to reach into this area and be easy to reach down to both sides. So I'm happy with the way that having just these 2 doors has turned out. The last thing to do is just to put the rest of the wire on. This is really just a matter of measuring each individual little section that you have to put wire on. The front takes the longest because you have to put a little piece here, a piece on the doors, a piece in the middle, but the rest is just a solid piece on the back and a solid piece on the sides. I'm going to get to work on that. I may show you guys a little bit of that along the way, but it's just a matter of cutting the wire and stapling it on. Not a whole lot to it, so I'm going to get to work on that. We'll see you guys in just a little bit. Well, the cage is complete and I am very happy with the way that it turned out. Let's take a final look at it and see how everything fit together, and I want to show you just the overall size and how everything worked out. So just to go back over everything, this cage ended up being 8 feet long, it's 2 feet wide, and from the floor to the ceiling is 12 inches tall. This is perfect for quail. I do get a lot of questions about why are the cages so short for quail? Well, the reason is because if you have a tall cage, like say like the size of a rabbit cage, the quail, when they get scared, can actually jump straight up in the air, break their neck on the top of the cage, or at the very least injure themselves. So by having a shorter cage, no more than a foot tall, they don't have enough momentum to hurt themselves when they jump up. But I do like to have it up off the ground like this. It's easy to work in and just makes for a very nice way to handle your quail. So we put in 2 30-inch doors that I think are going to be perfect size for this cage. Even though there's a little room over here, you can reach well, and you can reach easily into the middle from one of the 2 doors. So I'm happy with the way this turned out. And then again, we covered the entire thing with 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch hardware cloth which for the grow outs is the size that I really like to use. You guys, I hope you enjoyed spending some time with me in the new workshop while we build this new cage. It's going to be just about another, I don't know, 12 days or so before all of those quail that we hatched a week ago can move into this cage. We're going to move half of them into this new cage and half of them into our other grow out cage. And they'll live there for the next few weeks until we can kind of sort males from females and decide which ones we want to keep around as breeders. So I'm excited to be back into raising quail. In no time at all, I ought to be having more quail and quail eggs than I know what to do with. So I'm hoping that I can start selling some here locally. I'm excited for that to start up. You guys, if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I hope you'll hit that subscribe button before you leave. Don't forget that the absolute best way that you can help us is by sharing our videos on all of your social media. And until next time, thank you so much for stopping by our homestead. Take care and God bless.